which destroyed my hip. I am one of only 2 people who survived this explosion. I'm a war survivor and I suffer with PTSD every day. I can say with complete certainty that my interaction with the family court system has been significantly more traumatic than war, more traumatic than watching my friends die, and more traumatic than having my body destroyed. I had the ability to change the outcome of things in any given situation in war. I could try a little harder, I could fight a little harder, I could motivate myself to hold on one moment longer. In this situation, all I could do was stand by and watch the horror unfold while they took everything away from me. I would now like to give you a brief history of my relationship with my ex-girlfriend and the child that we have had together, so you may understand my plight, and you may understand the reason for me speaking with you here this evening. We were in a relationship for 2 years. Over the course of our relationship, my ex engaged in patterns of domestic violence against me, which began with emotional, verbal, and quickly escalated to physical abuse. Her abusive behavior dramatically escalated after she discovered she had become pregnant. This new pattern of behavior climaxed with an arrest for a Class 3 assault against me, where she also endangered the life of our, at that time, unborn child by slamming the door into her stomach in a fit of rage. There was a criminal case that I started against her about this situation, but it was recently dropped by the Adams County courts because she was deemed too incompetent to understand what's going on, yet she was deemed competent enough to take my son away from me. After the initial arrest, a protective order was issued against her by Adams County. Where I was grateful for the protective order, my ex used this as a pretext to deny me any access to my newly born son, Benjamin, therefore alienating him from me. Despite this tactic, she violated the protective order on several occasions, coming to my house and telling me things like, "I will teach your son Benjamin that you never loved him and that you never wanted anything to do with him." On one such occasion, she brought Benjamin to my house using him as a tool, demanding that I drop all the charges against her in return for allowing me access to my son Benjamin. This was the only time I have ever seen my son in person. It is my understanding that people are usually arrested for violating said protective orders, but this never occurred with my ex, despite notifying authorities and providing video evidence of said incident. A few weeks later, I was contacted by the Child Protective Services, who informed me that there were serious concerns, including possible removal of my child from my ex's home, due to her squeezing his head in the middle of the night, trying to get him to stop crying due to colic symptoms. This violent action happened for several days before it was described to her therapist, who then called CPS. The outcome was that my ex's mother was given custody by the CPS department, ignoring the biological father. I was never considered for custody, despite the fact I have set up a home for Benjamin. I have studied parenting literature. I have purchased all non-perishable items required for early child rearing. I have investigated early child nutrition, breast milk sharing programs, and I work from home. On top of all of this, I have repeatedly expressed a desire to share custody and help raise my son. To this day, because of this unjust system, I have never even held or interacted with my son. All right? At our first and only custody hearing, Judge Meacham of Adams County made fun of me for having a restraining order against my abusive ex-partner. Adams County then as a whole went on to ignore her violent pattern of abuse. Furthermore, she and her mother have refused to cooperate with court-ordered visitation instructions, blaming my work schedule for the refusal. Due to this, my contribution to my son's life has been limited to only child support, and he does not even know what I look like. If this were reversed and I were a woman and my ex were a man, she would be sitting in a jail cell facing felony charges for assaulting me and our child, and she would be experiencing consequences for violating said protective order. Instead, my poor defenseless son faces a life without his father in the hands of a violent monster, and there is nothing I can do. I have read the literature on life outcomes for children without fathers living in chaotic environments. My son faces increased likelihood of crime, incarceration, antisocial behavior, drug addiction, and suicide. This is the horror I have to watch unfold, unable to change anything in a situation and a system that protects an abuser. The child support system is broken. Courts immediately presume the child living with the mother and the father paying child support with no visitation rights as the best option, when at very least I deserve 50-50 custody for the benefit of my child. We need to abandon this antiquated and broken system for a gender-neutral system that outlines the true merits of a potential parental figure within a child's life. I say, oh, is that the end of my time? Okay. Well, that's basically the end of what I have to say.